Hey everybody, Mike Toy Bonsai Boise. So this is my Eugenia, commonly used as a houseplant or a topiary. Got this a few years ago. Let me take you back in time and show you where it came from. So that's how it looked when I first got it. So October of 21. I think I got it on clearance for, $5 or something probably. So it was skinny, scraggly, but I thought it had the right characteristics, fundamentally for a bonsai tree. Small leaves, twiggy branches, woody looking trunk, all the things you look for. So I wasted no time cutting it in half and made it even uglier than it was before. So that's kind of how it looked after I trimmed it up. And if that's not ugly enough, wait till you see these roots. I rewatched this video before this just to kind of remind myself, and it's like, wow, this thing was ugly. So the roots were an absolute mess. They were curling around and twisting and going upside down. But, you work with what you got. So I potted it up in this pot. At some point, I repotted it into the pot it's in now. I don't have any footage of that, and I honestly can't even remember when I did it. But this is how it looked at the time. So that's how it was about 2 years ago. Very scraggly, scrawny, skinny, ugly, straight branches in every direction, fundamentally flawed, roots a mess. Type of thing most people would probably get rid of and not try. But with some time and patience and trial and error, I got it looking halfway decent. So that's how it looks now. And in this video, I'm gonna trim it up, repot it into some new soil, take a look at those roots again, maybe work on them a little bit. Here's a look at the leaves. You can see the tips of them have this sort of reddish color as new growth is coming in. I had this in the grow tent for the past couple of months. I wired up some branches. Over time, over the past 2 years, I've done some work to it, just sort of here and there. Nothing major, but made a couple of big cuts. Took cuttings from it, and I have a couple of very small bonsais going. From cuttings off of this. So I'm just using the kind of standard practice of clip and grow, cutting the branches back to anywhere between 1, 2, or 3 sets of leaves, and trying to do it in such a way so that the leaves that I cut it back to are facing the direction that I would like the branch to grow. Getting rid of some that are going inward. There's a lot of branches here that are growing inward, which you can't see at first glance. You look at it and you think, wow, it looks full and healthy, and it is. It's when you sort of get in there and start taking a closer look at the structure that you see those branches that are growing inward. So got to get rid of those. I'm also going to take the wire off and rewire it in a couple other spots. And while I'm working on that, I can tell you a little bit of research that I did on these trees, these Eugenias. There's a million varieties in both what I would call the old world and the new world. I don't know what variety this was. I believe it was just on a clearance rack, if I can remember right. Probably just said Eugenia or general plant, something like that. So I don't know exactly what type this is. I'll probably do a little research at some point. But I believe it is in the family of myrtle. I I don't believe that they are cold hardy. I've never tried it though. Maybe some varieties are, I don't know. But I know that a lot of these Eugenias come from tropic zones or the Caribbean, Brazil, those type of places, Australia, which leads me to believe that they're not cold hardy. They do like a lot of light. Over this past year, we had it as sort of a little display tree in our kitchen. And it did okay for a while, but after about 6 months, it started to kind of suffer and experience some dieback and wasn't doing very good. So I put it back in the grow tent. And after a couple of months, it bounced back real good, looking like this. So I know that they like a lot of light. As for any future plans that I have for it, I guess right now it's kind of like a hybrid between a bonsai and a house plant, because it's not in a bonsai pot at the moment. Maybe someday. I'm sort of taking it low and slow, not getting too drastic with roots or pruning. I'm in no real hurry. Here's how it looks after being trimmed up. A little bit sparse, but that's okay. It's got to go through these cycles of looking sparse and then filling out, and looking sparse and filling out. I mean, you saw how it looked 2 years ago, so it can take it and it can fill back out. I'm going to take the wires off of these lower branches and see how well it held. It's been on there for at least 6 months. As far as their growth rate, I'm not sure how I'd classify it. In some ways, they're slow growers, but then once they start to grow, they grow a lot and they grow fast. So it's like they go through these little growth spurts where long period of time with no growth, and then all of a sudden, all the growth, and no slowing it down. So it looks like the wires did cut into the branch, at least in one spot right there. You can kind of see it. A couple spots, I guess. Which I can live with. I prefer it didn't, but I can live with it if that's all there is. Small price to pay to get these branches in shape. You can see a couple of stubs from where I made prunes earlier. It was really structurally wrong. It had, 3 or 4 branches coming out of one spot. I had to fix that. So now I'm going to give those middle branches a rest, and I'm going to try to wire down these lower branches in a little bit better spot, better position. There's a lot of ways you can wire these. And there's a ton of videos out there on different methods and how people say to do it. I don't want to say that there is no wrong way, because I'm sure there is. You can probably do it in such a way that it damages the tree. I know that if you get wiring scars and then you take it off and you rewire it in the opposite direction, that is the wrong way, because then you can get more wiring scars in the opposite direction, which is essentially it's the same thing as just scoring the branch, and the branch will just die. So don't do that. But I typically do it like this, where I just take one long piece, center it in the trunk, and then one half goes around one branch, one half goes around the other branch. I find that to be the easiest and most effective most of the time. Doesn't always work out that way though. I just sort of play around with it a little bit. Technically, I should probably get rid of one of those 2 branches that I just wired. But it doesn't seem to suffer too much from reverse taper, or any taper for that matter. It really just doesn't have any taper. Yeah, so that one didn't really hold its position as well. So I took some guide wire and wired it down, sort of anchored it underneath the root base there. Do you remember how ugly those roots were in that little clip from a couple years ago? I'll say that they didn't fix themselves in the past 2 years. They're just as ugly. I buried it hoping the problem would just go away, but it didn't. So that's how it looks. Kind of got it looks like pads. If you see those bonsais that have, growth pads on them, it's sort of looking like that. Not intentionally, just sort of ended up this way. So let's look at these roots. I have a little knife that I usually use to cut around it to get it out of the pot, and I can't find the knife right now. So I'll use a shish kebab stick. You can kind of already see one of those ugly roots right there. See it? My other hope going into this was that maybe that big ugly root that curled around will have sort of died and I could just get rid of it. Sometimes they do. So you go back in and they died. Oh, okay, and they just sort of break right off. The soil looked good, very crumbly. That's what you want. So after I work the soil out of the roots, you can see the problem remains. And there's new roots coming off of that ugly curly root, which is a real bummer. I could take the risk and cut it off, but I decided not to. It looks like about half of it died back. So, looks like the end of it had a little bit there, but so I'm gonna just take the half of it off. We'll just work on this ugly root situation one bit at a time, every couple of years. Make a couple other light trims, and that's how it looks. I've seen better, I've seen worse. I'll let that marinate in a bucket of water for a minute. I took the pot down and cleaned it up a little bit. It still has a little bit of calcium buildup around the top edge, inner edge there, you can see. By the way, if you have bonsai pots that have that calcium buildup and they're just nasty, get a crane stone. I sell them online for $20, $25. They are magic at getting that stuff off. So that's how the roots look after sitting in water for half hour or so. The soil mix that I'm using here is my typical soil mix, which is perlite, safety absorb, pine bark, and a little bit of volcanic rock. And I just take a minute here to work the soil into the roots so that there's no air pockets anywhere. This part typically takes the longest. And there it is. So I definitely think it looks better now than it did 2 years ago. I also think it still has a long way to go. You can see that the trunk is a little thicker than it was 2 years ago, not a ton, but a little. Give it some fertilizer. But I'm happy with its progress. Please like and subscribe If you haven't yet, you can see updates on this and some others. Also, you can go to this playlist and see the original video. Thank you for watching, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.